Hi, creative community. Today, I want to talk about clutter and decluttering and the typical things that we say over and over and over again that get in our way in terms of taking the next step. So, at least in the Northern Hemisphere, it is about to be spring, and spring offers us a great opportunity to get into that feeling of spring renewal. And often people then start thinking about spring cleaning, decluttering, and kind of getting into the groove. One of the things that, though, I think is really important is to think about how we're going to meet resistance when we start that process. Because for most people, decluttering has been on their list of things to do. And either we have these stop start processes, or we get overwhelmed, or sometimes we don't know where to start. And so then we find ourselves really frustrated. So I want to take a few minutes and talk a little bit about, some of the things that we say over and over again that really don't help us, and then how we might work through that. So first, let's just have a moment and really think about what is clutter. And I love the way Coach Christine Scalise says what her definition of clutter is. Clutter is the physical manifestation of unmade decisions fueled by procrastination. I'll say that again. Clutter is the physical manifestation of unmade decisions fueled by procrastination. That is just such a great definition. And so if we look around our room, and this could be any room, we're really going to see a few things, if not a lot of things, that we, procrastinate on. We don't want to make a decision about, right? Because making a decision, usually we have to get to the next layer of our story about that particular item. And it can, it can bring up some past issues. It can, um, really kind of reveal some things about some difficult decisions we might need to make. So, but we don't want that to stop us. So how might we deal with this, right, when these things come up? Let's talk about what we usually say. One, I might need it someday. Does that resonate with you? I might need it someday. So when we look at that, if we're saying that to ourselves, when we look at an item, that usually means that we are not ready to take action on it. And we have to be clear then about what is the benefit for having this, right? If you've had something for a really long time and you don't love it, you're not using it, it doesn't bring you joy, it's not, aesthetically pleasing in your environment, it's not useful, then this idea that you might use it someday, usually for me at least, and from people that I've worked with, usually comes from kind of a scarcity mindset. And the conventional wisdom is that if you can replace it, if it's $20 or less and can be replaced easily, you can let that go. This idea of I might use it someday sometimes connects us a lot to our past self. So, for example, when I was a graduate student, which is more than like 25 years ago at this point, I took a doll making class, which I really enjoyed. I took it with a friend, and we made, some wonderful creations. I was not the best doll maker, I will say, but I enjoyed it at the time. So 25 years ago, I had a whole set of, sculpty materials, beads and sewing pieces and fabric. And I just carried that from apartment to apartment, house to house. And I just thought, well, I might need this someday because I might go back to that doll making work. And so last year, one of the hardest things for me was that I had to look at that. I had to look at that and just say, I might come back to this when I'm retired, which is probably not going to be for a while. And I had to make peace with the fact that that previous self was a lovely previous self, but keeping the extensive set of materials that I had was not really benefiting me. So that I might need it someday is usually a sign that if we haven't used it, we're probably not going to use it. And one way to think about that is, or a strategy around that is to give it and I used to do this with different kinds of things, is to put a date on it. So if you're like, okay, I might need this someday, let's create someday as in the next 2 months, 3 months, 6 months. And then you have to be willing to take action on that. Once that 6 months passes, which most of the time it will, um, you have to be able to let that go. And for my doll making materials, one of the great things that is just really pleasing is that I reached out and found a local family who, just wanted to have all of those materials and work with their kids with that. So I got to let that go and it went to a good home. Another top phrase that we will say to ourselves is, it was a gift. And this is also a difficult one for many of us because we want to honor that person who gave us something. But we also have to recognize that, sometimes we keep gifts or sentimental items from people that we're not even in contact with anymore, or that the gift really wasn't to our liking, but we did not, of course, want to say that to the person. And one of the strategies that can be really helpful is that the energy of giving something can be received with great intention. So we can receive that wonderful energy that that gift represents, but we can also, with great energy and intention, let that go and pass it on to someone who's going to enjoy it. And we have to trust that the person that gave that to us, got such great um, nourishment and a great feeling of being able to give that they really, we're holding on to gifts from 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, that person probably has completely forgotten about. So we have to believe that the energy of giving was that you accepted that, right? And being given to is a wonderful thing. And that it's okay for you to pass that gift on. And I know a lot of people really struggle with this. So you kind of gotta feel that sense that that energy is complete by receiving the gift. And then if it's no longer serving you or it just doesn't work for you anymore, you get to pass that on. Another one that we tend to say is, it was expensive, right? So how many of us have items in our house that it's really hard to let go of because it was expensive. Now, I was just with a close friend last weekend, and it was really interesting. She was giving me some things passing things down to me that were lovely, that fit me, and was great. But then she gave me this big tub of hair conditioner, and it was a product that I hadn't heard of before and probably wasn't going to work with my hair, just given some of the routines that I have and the style that I have. And it was really large bottle, and and it smelled really good. And she said, I've held on to this for 2 years because it was so expensive. She's like, I don't usually buy a $30 bottle of hair conditioner. And hey, I get it. And maybe there are things like that in your immediate environment. And I bet you can find at least one. And that is something where we have to really pause, do some inner work, and just say, that was the best decision I made at that point. But having this item, just because it's expensive, doesn't serve me now. We might have to do a little forgiveness for ourselves if it was an impulsive buy, if we felt pressured to buy it because we were with other people, which can happen sometimes if we're doing group shopping. And we just have to, forgive ourselves for that, for making a choice that maybe wasn't the right choice in the moment. And we also have to forgive ourselves for the fact of, if spending money, if we feel, again, a sense of scarcity, knowing that we tried to make the best choice. Sometimes we buy things and we bring them home and it just doesn't work, right? This is definitely relevant for me. I bought a dress. This is a long time ago. I would say close to 8 years ago now. I was with a dear friend who was visiting me, and we were having a great time. And I went to a boutique with this friend, and they picked out an outfit, and it was a designer outfit. And at the time, it was one of the most expensive outfits I had bought. And I think it was $91. Um, and it was, just all this energy around, the designer outfit or designer brand, and I looked good in it. And there was just something about at the time in my life and with that particular person, I just felt, not because they were doing anything inappropriate, but I just felt a bit more pressure to buy it because it's like, oh, it looks so good on me. And, it's something I should have. And it was expensive and it felt sort of fun at the moment. But I knew deep down, like I didn't have anything really for it to go within my wardrobe. It was very different kind of style for me. And I knew deep down that either I should have waited 24 hours, which is something that I do now in terms of buying something that I consider expensive, just wait 24 hours. And then if I still want it, but we were traveling, I probably was thinking at that moment, like, would we get back to that boutique, that kind of thing. And it has sat in my closet until really recently. I just had to let it go. So yes, it was expensive, but not serving me. Um, the other thing that people will say over and over and over again, especially when dealing in that first round of trying to declutter, is I might regret letting it go. So I think this is kind of pre-anticipatory grief for something. And we tend to overestimate actually the impact that letting one item go. Um, it's very rare in my experience, both in my own experience, but also coaching others related to issues around decluttering, that we regret it. We might have a feeling of emptiness in the moment or a feeling that you know, just kind of a little bit of difficulty, but it's very rare that you will remember it in a week, 2 weeks, 3 months, a year, 3 years, 5 years. So we want to try to, if you're struggling with that, you want to say to yourself, okay, am I over anticipating some grief I'm going to feel? And maybe do some journal writing about it and, giving this item kind of writing down its story and being able to release it with love and care. Another thing that I do, I like to take a picture of an item. If I really feel like, oh, I've been holding onto this for a long time and I might regret it, I like to take a picture so I don't forget it because I have this fear that I'm gonna, forget things over time, things that I really cherished. And I have to say, I then will declutter the picture over time because it's very rare that I really regret letting something go. So you may have to, and that's why decluttering, it's good for it to take place over a series of days or weeks, so that you can kind of deal with those feelings. And then, another one that is people really struggle with is that it belonged to someone special. So sometimes we have inherited items that were meaningful to someone else and that got passed down to us. And this is a tricky one because sometimes we also feel some scrutiny about, well, if my aunt gave me this particular item and she ever visits, and she doesn't see the item, what is she gonna think of me? And this is where I feel like we have to be honest with ourselves and we have to remember that we are autonomous adults with the right to choose. So if I would say if this item has belonged to someone special and you do want to keep it, then maybe highlight it in your environment, right? So a lot of times we'll have special items from people that we may have various feelings about, but they're not highlighted in our environment. They're not put in a special frame. They're not, on a bookcase. They're not in a place where we can take a lot of joy from it. So that might be the first thing you ask yourself, is this special item that someone gave to me, one, is it still meaningful? And if it is, and you don't want to declutter it, then you want to take some steps to um, make sure that it's highlighted in your environment, that it feels special, right? If it's the case, which for most people it usually is, that you would like to declutter it or get rid of it, then again, you want to take some care with that. You might want to journal about that. You might want to think about also the degree to which you are allowing yourself to be held kind of emotional hostage to an item, to, the relationship with this person is probably vastly more important than the particular item that, may or may not be of interest, may or may not be of interest to you in your environment. So you want to maybe, take a look at that. We don't want to be held hostage by the things in our environment. And if we tend to be a little bit of a people pleaser, this can be a big issue. So I encourage you to look at that. So I want you to scan your environment, either the room that you're in or go into another room and really think about what are the irritants, when you look at those items that they're really irritating to you, or that you want to move them forward, and just go through that list. I might need it someday. It was a gift. It was expensive. I might regret it. It belonged to someone special. And, see how you might take action on it. So those of you who want to go deeper into this material, you'll see below that I have an amazing, wonderful, special self-paced declutter challenge for creative people. Now, everyone deals with clutter and has to manage clutter, but I have found that if you are a creative person and you are aspiring creative professional or actively a creative professional, you have to balance out physical clutter, which you can be deeply impacted by, and kind of emotional clutter, dealing with perfectionism, dealing with procrastination, dealing with inner critics. And so creative people benefit so tremendously from dealing with their clutter. And I've developed a Feng Shui inspired, and Feng Shui is the philosophy and art of placement. This self-paced declutter challenge is not like anything you've ever done before. And if you sign up for it now, or really in the next couple of weeks, roughly around April 12th, you will be able to get on a live call with me. And also you'll get a bonus call with me in conversation with a trauma expert and talking about the relationship between trauma and clutter, which is going to be so juicy. So find all the details there. If you're not on in my creative community newsletter, you'll also see a link for that where I'd love to support you around your creative efforts, and you'll get some cool audio guided visualizations as well. Please like and or subscribe to this channel, and I will be back in the next video talking about 5 more things that we tend to say that prevent us from getting up on our clutter. All right, bye for now.